Well, let's talk a bit more then about the Iran-US deal, because after 15 weeks of conflict, an initial agreement has been found. Although it's still a framework, it does mark the biggest breakthrough so far towards resolving a conflict that has killed thousands of people and upended energy markets since February. The text of the deal is expected to be signed in Geneva on Friday, and for the moment, few details have been officially confirmed, with uncertainty persisting over a number of issues, including the Strait of Hormuz, Iran's nuclear program, and the fate of Lebanon. Peter O'Brien has our report.
These families in Sidon are heading south, despite the authorities telling them not to do so, and Israel saying it won't withdraw.
I'm filling up fuel, then we'll put our trust in God and head to our homes. Praise be to God.
The United States and Iran are set to sign a deal to end the war on Friday. A breakthrough, but in Beirut there's as much skepticism as there is relief.
The ceasefire is very good, but what is important is that it is implemented.
They say there's a ceasefire, but there's destruction.
And among Israelis in Jerusalem, opinion is divided.
It's a great relief. The real way to solve conflicts is through agreements.
Trump caused us a very massive damage with this agreement. He should have continued with the war, put down the regime.
Mediator Pakistan declared an immediate end to military operations. Oil prices dropped on the news, with US President Donald Trump ordering the end to a blockade of Iran's ports, and the US and Iran agreeing to open the Strait of Hormuz once the memorandum is signed. Then there'll be a 60-day period for negotiations on Iran's nuclear program and on US sanctions. Citing security forces, Reuters is reporting that Hezbollah has not taken any military action since the announcement, and the pace of Israeli attacks has decreased dramatically. In a statement, Israeli Defense Minister Israel Katz said the military will remain in captured parts of Lebanon, Syria and Gaza and resist any pressure to withdraw.
Well, to speak more then about this Iran deal, Ali Vaez joins me live on the programme. He's the director of the Iran Project and a senior advisor at the International Crisis Group. He joins us now from Geneva. Hello to you and thanks for speaking to us here on France 24.
Good to be with you.
Look, we have, over the course of the past 15 weeks, thousands of people dead in Iran, in Lebanon as well, huge turbulence in the global economy, and an Iranian regime still in place. Now we have the framework of a deal with the United States, but it doesn't seem that it's too different from the JCPOA, the deal that Donald Trump ripped up, the original nuclear deal with Iran. So I wonder what it is that you think actually has been achieved now.
Well, if you want to look at it from a perspective of strategic achievement, this war was an epic folly, really, because not only it didn't bring the objectives that U.S. and Israel had in mind any closer, regime change or significant weakening of the Iranian regime, its fracturing, or destruction of its offensive or defensive capabilities or its regional network, or forcing it to surrender to U.S. terms on its nuclear program, for instance. Not only none of these things happened, but in the process, of course, Iran was granted a weapon of mass disruption. It's control over the Strait of Hormuz. And what we're getting right now in terms of the Memorandum of Understanding is not even a fully detailed, comprehensive nuclear agreement in the way that the 2015 nuclear deal was. It was 159 pages of very detailed technical issues. Here, you only have a page and a half, and it doesn't even go into substantive detail on the nuclear front. It basically addresses the essential and defers the substantial. This is all we have been achieved after, as you said, more than 100 days of a devastating war.
Yes, and so therefore, from the perspective of the Iranian regime, do you think this framework for a deal, thin as it is good news for them?
Well, so look, at the end of the day, both sides can define what they have achieved as a victory. But the reality is that I think this had turned into a lose-lose dynamic for both sides. Yes, the Iranian regime can say that it has survived, and that is victory. But this survival has come at a very high cost for it. The amount of damage that the Iranian economy, Iranian infrastructure has suffered is really astronomical. And surviving the hot war is one thing, but then they would have to rebuild in a cold peace, and that is a major challenge in front of them. And same for the United States. Yes, they have been able to degrade some of Iran's capabilities. Iran has not been enriching uranium for the past year, but as I said, none of the problems were resolved. And in the process, the U.S. replaced an 86-year-old supreme leader with a 56-year-old Ayatollah Khamenei and a regime that is much more hardline and radical. So yes, both sides have a narrative of victory, and that is essential for any diplomatic agreement. But those narratives of victory also have a lot of holes in them.
And I appreciate that we only have this page and a half memorandum of understanding for the moment, but there has been some leaked text. I'm going into a few more details. From your understanding, on the Strait of Hormuz, what's been agreed?
So what's been agreed is that the Strait will go back to status quo ante in the course of about 30 days. It would take about 4 to 6 weeks to do mine-sweeping operations and make sure that the international waterway in the Strait is safe and secure. In that period, traffic would have to go through Iranian territorial waters. And so it is agreed, even if it might not be necessarily in the text, but Iranian rules and regulations would apply in that period. Whether in the text there is anything about Iran charging a service fee because traffic is going through its territorial waters at this stage is unclear. The text will clearly say that there will be no tolls, and Iranians are not framing the service fees as a toll. But we would have to see what happens in practice. And I think papering over some of these differences and details risks creating more misunderstandings than understandings when you have only a 14-point long document in which you don't have a lot of technical details.
Yeah. And what about Israel? It was not a party to these negotiations. Is it the biggest loser here? Because we know Israel really wanted to see Iranian regime change. And as you say, we actually have a more hardline regime now in power in Tehran.
Well, look, again, it depends. I have difficulty defining these things as clear win and losses because Israel has been able to get a much weaker Iranian regime in terms of its pure capabilities, right? But in the process, the Iranian regime has also learned a lot of lessons, has also learned how to fight against the United States and Israel. And it has survived, and it has become bolder, and it has even launched attacks against Israel directly from its territory, not in retaliation of an Israeli strike on its own soil, but in retaliation of Israeli strikes in Beirut. So yes, overall, I think the damage that this has caused to U.S.-Israel relations, the amount of political backlash that it has produced in the United States against Israel, it is a net loss, but Prime Minister Netanyahu has been consistent at pursuing this anti-Iran policy for 4 decades, and I wouldn't be surprised if he would still continue to pursue it, even if it hasn't delivered the intended results yet.
And just a final thought for you then on Lebanon. You mentioned Lebanon just there. The fact that Iran. What I'm interested in is the relationship now between Iran and Hezbollah. Is Hezbollah more of a proxy of Iran than it was before this all began? And do you think that events in Lebanon, an Israeli attack on Lebanon, could cause this very tentative framework to unravel?
Well, in fact, I think this war turned Hezbollah from a proxy into a full-on partner. You can almost say that there is a status of like a NATO partnership, Article poor alliance between the two, because Hezbollah came into this conflict in support of Iran, and Iran didn't agree to end the conflict without the ceasefire and the end of the hostilities also applying to Hezbollah. We've had a lot of wars between Hezbollah and Israel that Iran didn't directly engage in. And so the nature of the partnership, I think, has changed. Whether this would survive the test of time is another question. If Iran really benefits from this agreement, or if this agreement turns into a more comprehensive, detailed agreement down the road, it would be a surprise if Iran would be able and willing to really actually sacrifice all of those benefits at the altar of Hezbollah. We will have to see. But at this stage, the relationship, I think, has never been more strategic and deeper than it is today.
All right. Ali Vaez talking to us there from the International Crisis Group. Good to get your analysis. Thank you so much.
Thank you.